We move now to chronic absenteeism. That's when a student misses 10% or more of school days. While the percentage of students who are chronically absent has declined, rates remain well above pre-pandemic levels. That's the case nationally, in Nevada, and in the Clark County School District, where chronic absenteeism last school year was about 6 percentage points lower than the previous school year. Here to explain their work in that reduction are Debbie Palacios, Executive Director of Communities in Schools of Southern Nevada, Marco Mercado, a Communities in Schools of Southern Nevada Site Coordinator, and Kevin McPartland, Associate Superintendent at the Clark County School District. Thank you all for joining us. And Marco, I want to start with you because you were recently featured as part of a national campaign with CIS. Your picture, along with that of a former student, was on a big building in Dallas. I want to know about that student. What was his story? What was keeping him from getting to school? And how did you resolve that?
Well, thank you for having me. So when it came to my former student, some of the things that were, keeping him from coming to school was just more of like, kind of like issues at home, transportation. Sometimes it would result in like, having to go to work instead of like going to school. And we kind of started, there was a solution for every like issue once you kind of like broke it down, and just the importance of getting your education, even though there might be other things going on, and kind of focusing on yourself and your future. You
mentioned transportation. Some of the other issues that lead to chronic absenteeism, what are they, Debbie, that you have found?
Yes, it's really important to ask students and families what they are going through. And so a lot of it sometimes is not just a student issue, but it is a family issue. So we know that families struggle with transportation. It could be housing insecurity, food insecurity, childcare. So we have older students perhaps taking care of younger siblings. So really just really tough issues that are affecting not just our students, but also their families.
How does the school district go about addressing those complicated issues?
Certainly, and the great thing is there is an awareness of chronic absenteeism is not just a school district issue, it is a community issue. So one of the things that we've done in the last 18 months is really focus on getting out to the families. And so we have 30 attendance enforcement officers, and we focus on home visits. We've narrowed the scope of their practice to get to home visits. Last year they did 38,000 home visits to really get into the homes to identify what that need is and then connect them to our partners. So, we have identified there's 5 main root causes that we've identified, even though it's very individualized. It involves mental health, it involves academic gaps, childcare needs, and basic needs. And so that's where we try to fill, like, is it clothing? Is it housing? Is it, where there's some bullying situation going on at school, and we work with the individual schools and the families to resolve that.
Debbie, are there certain communities among students that are more impacted than others by chronic absenteeism?
Absolutely. We see it, of course, in our high needs schools. Communities in Schools is currently in over 80 schools here in the Clark County School District, and they are our Title I schools, or schools where we know that students and their families are living at or below the poverty line. And then that also affects our students of color. So primarily those are communities of color, and what we really want to do is go into those communities and first and foremost identify the issues, identify those barriers, but then also look at what are some of the really great assets of those communities and leverage those in order to be able to build those relationships and seek those needs. And we do that through our partnerships with our schools, with our educators. We know that these issues are way too big for one entity to be able to tackle on their own, so that collaboration piece is critical.
Kevin, you and I had spoken off camera about basic needs, clothing, for example. A child may have only one pair of clothes to wear and does not want to go back to school wearing the same thing every day. These kind of issues existed prior to the pandemic, though, right? So why is this such a big issue now?
Yeah, no, I think, and again, yeah, it absolutely existed before. I think that, COVID and the lockdown and students being isolated and not being able to go to their safe place at school, it really just put a magnifying glass on some of the pre-existing issues and students, not being able to go to their safe place a lot of times at school. And then also just exacerbated where parents kind of had to deal with their own needs to provide for the family, and the students were kind of left behind a little bit. So it's certainly they exist, but it exponentially expanded the issues.
But if that was their safe space, then wouldn't they want to go back to it now that school is back open?
You might not always have the option when you're helping provide for your family or assisting them in things that maybe they used to do and aren't able to, because I knew a lot of students that had to not only get themselves ready, but get their younger siblings ready and made sure that they got to school on time and made sure that they were there to pick them up. Certain things like that, or, sometimes, I gotta help provide for this family, so I'm gonna choose to work instead of going to school. It's not necessarily what I wanna do, but it's what I need to do.
How difficult is it getting parents on board on this topic?
I think, with the Clark County School District, we have our Attendance Matters campaign, and it really talks about just explaining to parents some of the procedures that schools have and some of the reasons why it's important to go to school and family habits that can support it. But then most importantly, the resources that are available. Because again, we do have a lot of instances where parents have to get up to go to work early. Students now are taking care of themselves to try to get there. And sometimes it is where if there is some kind of childcare or just some kind of place that can go and then transport the students there, and we can provide that. So I think parents, a lot of times it's not just that they aren't aware that students need to be in school. There's just so many obstacles in the way that we need to help fill the gaps to support those families.
I would also like to say, I think I'm not a parent myself, but what I see with just, I've worked with so many students along these, 8 years, and something I want to say is that I do think, as a parent, I could understand a parent having, pride and not wanting to ask for help, but, it's okay, and we all need help every now and then, and there's no need to be ashamed of that, and knowing that you're doing it for your child. And I mean, if the resources are out there, take that advantage.
Yeah.
If I could just jump on that, you're so right, Marco. And that's where with our attendance enforcement officers, when they go to the homes, it's not a parents, you're screwing up, you got to get your kid to school. It's really like, there's something going on here, we want to help. And that's where parents are really, it's not this punitive thing, and parents are a little bit more accepting of okay, you're not here to yell at me or to get me in trouble, you want to help, and that's really the tactic we've been taking.
And I was going to say something I remember telling students, it matters the approach that you do speak to students, and an approach that they're probably used to is like, you're going to get in trouble, this is, why are you missing so much school? And I feel like my approach was always like, hey, what's going on? What can I help you with? What are you willing to share so I can hopefully assist you? And I think, that just has to do with the collaboration piece and building those rapport with those students.
Last thing, Debbie, I'm going to put you on the spot. You said creative approaches. Can you name one that's kind of outside of the box?
Yeah, absolutely. So we support over 70,000 students here in our community, and we do that a lot through our resource rooms. And these resource rooms are stocked with whatever students might need. We've talked about clothing, it could be hygiene supplies, it could be shoes, but one of our resource rooms, for instance, stocks alarm clocks, because we have students who are getting themselves to school. And so when we collect school supplies, we actually put alarm clocks on that list, which folks might not necessarily equate to a school supply, but it is something that a student needs that's going to help them be successful, so they can have an alarm clock that will wake them up so that they are able, because mom and dad maybe are working that shift and can't get them to school, and then they can get themselves to school. So again, just really getting to know those students, those families, building that trust, and making sure that we understand how we can help.
Thank you all for joining Nevada Week. And thank you for watching.